The Timeline is a Blue Wire podcast. Welcome to the Timeline of Phoenix Suns podcast. Sam, how you doing?
Hello. We are recording here a couple hours after the end of the second round of the NBA draft. We wanted to wait to record our full podcast until everything had happened. The dust had settled. I am good, by the way. Thank you for asking. I'd also like to thank the almost 600 people in total, I think, who tuned into our stream. This was last night of the first round on playback. We all watched the first round together. Did not have the opportunity to do that today for the second round, but man, I'm feeling really good right now. I am feeling like the Suns just had, and there's not much competition here, but this is the most positive I've felt about a Suns draft night since 2018. So it's been a while, man. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's the first time that James Jones has made trades to add picks. Is that right? It might actually be the first time he's added picks to the Suns instead of sending them out, because, I mean, all in all, the Suns traded the 22nd pick for a bunch of picks. They traded a fake, what I would consider a fake Boston pick for a real pick that they then flipped along with one of the picks they got in the 22nd trade to pick another player to move up in the draft, and ended up essentially with three players, one on a two-way. Of course, the first one being Ryan Dunn, and I will say right now, we're going to do an in-depth conversation about Dunn with our friend Richard Stayman, a.k.a. Mavs Draft, towards the end of this podcast, where we get into a lot of details about what kind of player he is.
Recorded the morning before the second round took place.
That's right.
So we are now, the second half was recorded first, and we are now recording the first half of the podcast after the entire draft has taken place.
And since then, the Suns also nabbed Oso Ighodaro and Jalen Bridges, players that were considered higher than they were picked, I think, in most mock drafts that you look at. And it really feels like, for a team that really didn't have a great pick, they did pretty well in this draft. I feel pretty good, I think, right now.
Yeah, it's not just us either. It's the first time really that national sentiment has been positive about the Suns on draft night in quite a long time. And I was joking with you before we got on here to record officially, like, James Jones, truthfully, bro, I was not familiar with your game. Like, when you talk about it was the first time that he's added picks, but also, like, maybe the first time he's showing a real commitment to developing young talent at all, right? And like, the guys he took were not necessarily what we think of as the quintessential James Jones prospect, right?
Yeah.
He didn't take
Jalen Bridges.
In some ways, Jalen Bridges. We'll get to Jalen Bridges, right? Yeah. So in some ways, but I think we should start with the view from 40,000 feet up, which is really about Ryan Dunn and Oso Ighodaro.
Yeah.
The Suns, we've been complaining about for a while, need athletes. They need athleticism, not just because, like, it makes them more fun to watch, which it does. Like, it will improve the product. It will electrify the crowd. It will be fun. I can't wait for Summer League, by the way. Summer League's going to be so fun now. But also, it just makes them better. They needed better point-of-attack defenders. They didn't have any on the roster. They needed guys who can catch lobs. They didn't have that on the roster, who have vertical spacing and can put pressure on the rim. These are things that they literally don't have. And I think finally sort of coming to that realization that other contending teams have these traits on their rosters, and that the Suns needed that too. So, you know, James Jones easily could have just traded these picks for mediocre role players who don't have athleticism but have, like, skill, or he could have drafted guys who have skill. But I think it's very telling that, like, he went in a particular direction here where the Suns acquired two of the better defenders in the entire draft class between Dunn and Iguodaro.
Yeah, I think it says a lot. It in some ways it feels like the Kamara pick do-over. Like they knew what they wanted in Kamara last year and they had to trade him. I don't think they wanted to trade him. They did have to trade him in the DeAndre Ayton trade. Now Ryan Dunn feels like a much higher upside version of what Kamara was, so they found a way to do it again, essentially with a similar sized player, a player who has potential to be a center, which we're going to talk about later with Richie, and a really, really high level defender with Ryan Dunn. And I think what was cool about that is it seemed like they got the player they wanted while trading back. Now, that was something that's been talked about with James Jones in the past. Now, this is actually the second time he's done that. He traded back to pick Cameron Johnson in the past and got Dario Saric. In this case, he essentially traded back in order to facilitate also getting Iguodaro. I think that was part of what they ended up using to trade up in the second round and get Iguodaro. So, essentially, part of what they used the 22nd pick for was both of these guys. And to be able to trade back and still get the guy that you want, I think is a home run. Whether or not they work out, there's always a ton of variables and a ton of factors that play into that. But just being able to increase your assets while getting the players you want, that's what you want every good organization to do.
I mean, again, this could have played out so differently, right? Like they could have easily just... we talked about the Gambo 5 on our playback the other day, which is the players that Gambo was reporting, the Suns were interested in or guys they had worked out. But like various guys who had worked out for the Suns that we knew about, Tyler Kolek, they could have taken him at 22. He didn't actually get drafted until 34, which I think surprised a lot of people. So, I'm glad not only were they able to move back, but they were able to move back, still get the guy they wanted, and recoup more assets rather than just, spending the 22nd pick on a Tyler Kolek or a Tyler Smith who went in the second round or a Filipowski. Speaking of which, I'm sure you saw the Filipowski stuff coming out today. I don't want to get into that exactly.
Feel free to search his name on Twitter if you don't know what we're talking about.
Yeah, there's a lot of Kyle Filipowski drama going around right now. Maybe other than Bronny going to the Lakers, which I guess was expected, but is maybe carrying the ratings of the second round today because it's kind
probably
of
the main reason they switched the second round to its own day so they could do a full day of Bronny coverage.
Yeah, absolutely. So like you said, we're going to talk about Ryan Dunn with Richie. So I think in this first segment, let's focus a little bit more. What we know about Ryan Dunn, I'll just say this. We all know he's a great defender. We all know he can't shoot and is a terrific athlete, right? I don't think there's anything else to say about it for now until we get into the deeper breakdown with Rich. So Oso Iguodaro, do you want to go there?
Yes.
What was your reaction to this trade, first of all? Because
I was happy that I knew who it was.
Yeah.
Because we watched a lot of Tyler Kolek films, so yeah.
Because you knew who it was because we specifically talked about Tyler Kolek, and for those who don't know, probably everyone knows by now, but Oso Iguodaro was the second leading scorer on that Marquette team, the main pick and roll finishing big next to Tyler Kolek, who again led his conference in assists, led the entire NCAA, no, not the entire NCAA, but led his conference in assists. And Iguodaro was the main guy that he was assisting throughout the season. And so when we talk about what the Suns are getting here, they are getting an undersized big, but still, to be clear, very much a center. He played center at the college level. The plan is for him to play center at the NBA level, maybe only 6'9.5", 6'10", with a 6'11" wingspan. So that's why people say he's undersized, and that's probably the principal reason that he went where he did in the draft. But if you're willing to overlook that, this is an athletic guy. He's not long, but he is athletic. He had a 35-inch standing vertical at the combine, which was, I think, second most among all centers who measured. He had a 39.5-inch max vert, so basically a 40-inch vert, which was third most among all the centers who were measured. Yeah. He's very comfortable dribbling the ball. He can initiate from the top of the key. He can drive the ball, finish over the top with floaters. He can pass and assist to guys in the short roll. He averaged 3.6 assists per 40 minutes at Marquette with a good assist-to-turnover ratio. He's got the athleticism to guard multiple positions. Again, we're talking about a guy who's 6'10", so, if you're going to throw him in the fire and have him guard Embiid or Jokic, that might be a problem. But if you're talking about him being able to guard your standard 4 or even 5 these days in the NBA, he projects as a pretty good defender who has a lot of positive defensive tape to go look at if you look up his highlights on YouTube. So he's undersized,
especially
if
he bulks up a little bit too, right? Because he is skinny right now. Yeah,
no doubt. But that's just what it is, right? Main knocks on him, another guy like Ryan Dunn who can't shoot and undersized for his position. But the stats paint a good story.
Can't shoot, but is a big. Whereas Ryan Dunn, it's like you hope he can be a big. So it's not as big of a deal with someone like Iguodaro. Now I want to add to what you're talking about specifically, the push shot. I just want to really highlight that the man loves push shots. If you watch his highlights, if you look at his shots, he shoots a lot of those push shots, a lot of floaters in the paint. And I think it's actually interesting to think about that because he'll shoot them all the way out to the free throw line and maybe even slightly beyond the free throw line. And if you're thinking about how the way the Suns are guarded, when bigs are catching it in the short roll, they're often catching it right at the free throw line. And defenses often shade off the corners into the paint, so they're trying to stop these bigs at the rim. If you have someone who can go up and over those on the catch, similar to what DeAndre Ayton was capable of doing for a while when he was on the Suns, it's pretty effective, right? It's pretty effective to have a guy who can finish in the paint but not in the restricted area because that is a soft area of the floor defensively. It's somewhere where defenses don't necessarily put a lot of pressure on teams when you have star players that get trapped on the outside. So I'm not surprised that they looked at a player that was capable and able to do that. But something we talked about with Kolek.
Yeah, sure.
They run a ton of NBA stuff at Marquette. Now, we talked about this when trying to identify what he was capable of doing as a point guard. The same could be said for Iguodaro because what they're doing, the side pick and rolls, the double drag, the handoffs, the type of stuff that they're doing with read and react with not necessarily just running set plays over and over and over again, that's translatable to the NBA. And the two most important factors in most of those plays for Marquette were those two guys. So it's the kind of thing with, if you want to watch his film, which I assume people listening to this podcast will, it's not very hard to picture how a lot of this will look in the NBA. The speed's faster, the guys are bigger. I mean, you could factor all of that in, but it's not college basketball where they're pounding the rock a whole bunch and doing a bunch of maybe slightly boring things. Like, it looks a little similar to NBA ball as far as play style, and that's going to help you to understand what he can do.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he's going to be able to transition really fast. I'm glad you brought that up because we did have that exact conversation about Kolek. I think he's going to have a quick transition period to the NBA compared to your average rookie. Now, I think he's still going to get bullied because of his frame if he plays the 5. He's 210 pounds right now, and he needs to fill out if he wants to have a long NBA career. We're definitely going to see that, when he hits an NBA court for the first time, particularly when it comes to stuff like finding the right screening angles, not being bullied as a defensive rebounder, that sort of thing. Where time will tell if Oso's
not
really
letting
able to
guys
hold up
just
in those
switch,
departments.
Because if they can just switch on him constantly, that doesn't really help. If he can punish a switch, which he might be able to, because part of what he's good at with that push shot also is translatable to some level of hook shots, even getting a little further and further away from the rim.
But ultimately, you can just tell watching the tape that he has the intelligence where, he understands NBA concepts already. And also, I already said this on Twitter, but it's like just watching this guy who can so clearly take advantage of 2-on-1 situations at the short roll or initiate in like a delay set or something from the top of the key. But then also the fact that he can actually finish at the rim, he can actually jump 40 inches. It's so clear that the Suns are just watching what Jusuf Nurkic can do, but then being like, let's improve that flaw. Like, let's improve the flaw that's frustrating so many Suns fans, and I'm sure the organization as well, that Nurkic, it's great if Nurkic can catch and play make in the middle of the floor after a star gets trapped, but then if he can't do anything with it in terms of, scoring the ball for himself, if he's always got those flat-footed layups or he can't rise up and catch a lob, well, let's go fix that. Let's go get a guy who we believe can do that. Now, Oso has inherent weaknesses that he'll never be able to, he's never going to be the rebounder that Nurkic is, right? Like, he's just
he'll never
not
be
that
7
big.
feet tall. Yeah,
exactly. But the fact that he can rise up 40 inches and catch a lob over the top of a defense or catch the ball in the short roll and finish over the top with an efficient floater, that's just stuff that, in theory, if that clicks for Oso at the next level, Nurk's never been able to do that, and he never will be able to do that. So there's real potential here, I think, for Oso to stick around the league as a big who can finish, can defend, It would be nice if he learns to shoot, but mostly he just needs to fill out.
Yeah. I think the defense will still continue to be one of the bigger question marks, specifically rim protection. If you can find the right guys around him that can help him out, I think that would be helpful as well. Getting stronger to be able to absorb guys will be helpful as well. Even though he's a little undersized, even though he's a little bit skinny right now, he's still physical. Like he doesn't seem to be someone who's trying to shy away from contact or avoid contact offensively or defensively. You talked about his ball handling. He does have a little bit of ball handling. What I find interesting about that is when you watch him out in the perimeter, if he has a smaller guy on him, he's dribbling in a way that he's dropping his shoulder into them, pushing them back as far as he can, then turning his back when he's already closer to the rim and turning that into a post up. Now that could take a dribble or two. Doesn't sound that impressive for some guys, but when you have a big who can take a dribble or two and then get to the right position to start posting up a little closer to the basket, it's effective. Yeah. Whether or not you can do that with NBA guys, that remains to be seen because it's a different breed of opponent. They're a lot bigger, a lot stronger, a lot faster. So we'll see how it translates. But if it does, that'd be helpful.
This would be insane if he could ever do this, but I even saw a couple plays at the college level where they were running inverted ball screens, where Oso was suddenly Oso was the ball handler, and Tyler Kolek was setting screens for him in order to generate mismatches where he could shove a shoulder into a guy and again,
shoot the push shot, which he does
college.
As inverted pick and roll. Yeah,
right,
it's funny.
Right, but that's college. So it's easier to play bully ball for him as a 6'9", 200-pound guy in college than it's going to be in the NBA. But the fact that we've even seen it at college is way more than you expect from your traditional big. Like that
teams don't run
on
that.
Film.
Yeah, teams don't run that in college. To see an inverted pick and roll, that's an NBA thing. To see an inverted pick and roll in college is kind of a cool thing. I do have a comp. I don't know if this is... I didn't look at the comps for Iguodala like when we were doing the first round, but offensively, a lot of what he was doing reminded me of Brandon Clark, and I give a lot of credit to somebody on Twitter who pointed that out too. Defensively, Clark came into the league with like a high-level defensive upside, which remains to be seen with Iguodala. I think he's capable of learning. I'm not sure if there were issues at Marquette that impacted his defense. We'll see how the Suns view it. But seeing how he plays offensively reminded me of Brandon Clark. And the thing that I think sticks out about both Dunn and Iguodala in the way that people talk about them, people that we like, people that we trust, IQ. It comes up with both these guys like constantly. These are really high IQ level players, really high IQ level players. Now, we've talked about the James Jones requirements for a draft pick in the past. Now, sometimes it's tall shooter. Like that could be as simple as that. He's done that multiple times. But every time it's IQ. They always talk about these guys are high-level, high IQ players with everyone that he's worked with in the past. Maybe Jalen Smith less so. But even Jalen Smith, he had that reputation as well. And people say that Dunn and Iguodala are two of the highest IQ players in the draft. Now, we'll see how that translates, but that's still great to hear.
Highest IQ and certainly highest motor. Like, you just watch the tape and you can tell. So, there's a lot of stuff that could click right for them. Yeah, we're gonna simplify their offensive game in year one and see what they're capable of doing with the stars around them. The one thing I will say, I'll say a couple things. One, slightly unfortunate aspect of this is that neither of them can shoot. So, there is this question that's going to come up of, well, how much can they play together, right? Like we're going to talk much more extensively about Ryan Dunn after we come back from the break in the next segment. But, spoiler alert for that, we're going to talk about his ability to hang as a small ball five. Well, obviously, if Ryan Dunn's going to be maximized as a small ball five, we're also talking about Oso as a five. This doesn't necessarily feel like the Suns betting that like both of these guys are going to pan out as much as it feels like they're taking two cracks at it and seeing. I mean, that's just natural when you have a late first round pick and a second round pick. It's Chris and
Bender. Yeah.
Right. They're sort of taking two cracks at it and just hoping that they can get a good positional player.
But
out
they
of this
also have a G
two.
League team now.
That's
like
true.
If they think,
That's true.
If they think, like for example, if they think actually Iguodala, maybe he could be a shooter down the line, and they take 2 years to try and work on that in the G League, that's fine. Whatever it takes.
Dude, if Dunn at any point can become a shooter, then obviously fuck the small ball five thing. Like he becomes OG Anunoby at that point, right? Like he's an awesome perimeter player. So, you never know, but it's just the fact that there's both of these guys definitely come with an inherent risk by virtue of the fact that both of them are non-shooters at this point. When you were talking about comps too, I want to give a shout out to our friend Durag, who's been on the pod before, because he made a comp that I definitely liked, comparing Oso to Trace Jackson Davis, who had a really awesome rookie season for the Warriors. Jackson Davis has like 30 pounds on Oso at this point, but is similar in the sense that, he's of more like the rotund but like short and stout kind of body frame, and then also rebounds the ball really well for a guy of his height, and can dribble and play make for others as a guy of his height, also catch lobs over the top of defenses. So I thought that was a pretty good comparison. If you go to KOC's big board, because you said you didn't see this, right?
No, yeah.
And of course, KOC tries to throw out like a lot of names that will like just kind of get you into it automatically, right? But like he says here, shades of Al Horford, which if Oso Ighodaro, drafted 40th overall, becomes anything like Al Horford, who's probably on his way to like, I don't know. Does Al Horford have a Hall of Fame resume? Have we thought about that?
Maybe.
Is Al Horford a Hall of Famer? He might be on the fringe. He would be like a classic, really weird Hall of Fame candidacy where everyone has to argue about whether he actually deserves it or not. But he's at least like kind of on the cusp, especially with this most recent championship with Boston. So yeah, I mean, if Ighodaro can be anything like Al Horford, that's such a win. And I think what KOC is talking about there is just like a 6'10" center who can actually defend at his position and like isn't playing you off the floor. Right, exactly.
Well, one of the coaches that got the most out of Al Horford, Mike Budenholzer. So I hope he's right about that one, because that would be a pretty big deal. The Suns also signed one more player, and this is an undrafted player. So far, I think there's probably going to be some more news about, at the very least, guys that are signed to the G League team. Jalen Bridges was the player that the Suns got, undrafted, and from all reports and from what we've heard, this guy made sure that he wasn't drafted because he wanted to make sure that he ended up on the Phoenix Suns with a chance. He's going to sign a two-way, from the news that we saw now, with a chance to compete for a roster spot, because a two-way gives him a path to play in the NBA. Like, he's capable of playing at least 40 to 50 games in the NBA. And Jalen Bridges, the film is fun. I'm sure you watched the Jalen Bridges film already. The dude could shoot. Like, he's got lots of ways he could shoot. And this, to me, I thought was funny for multiple reasons. One, it's fun to have another Bridges on the roster. I just, we had one that was great, and it's fun to think about another one being on the team. But two, James Jones can't help but try to draft a guy that looks and plays a little bit like him, right?
Yeah, those
he
wings
found
who
the
can
6'8", 6'9" guy who could shoot, that's skinny and, has long arms. That's James Jones. He's looking for those guys.
We drafted arguably the two worst shooters in the class prior to that.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna cut James Jones a little bit of slack on the Jalen Bridges part and say, look, we need shooters. The other thing I wanted to say just about Dunn and Ighodaro is that, like, now if you're KD, and this is a point we've already been stressing, but if you're anyone playing around those guys, you're KD, you're Beal, you're Booker, you're Grayson, you got to make up for their deficiencies, right? You got to launch. At some point, Eric Gordon just declined his player option today. I don't think anyone's really crying too many tears over it. We've talked about kind of some of the ways in which Eric Gordon was a little bit of a disappointment for the Suns last year. That being said, what you say about Eric Gordon, he shot a ton of threes. He launched a ton of threes and did provide that spacing. And now someone, either through free agency or maybe it's Jalen Bridges, is going to have to step in and kind of help fill that void and get enough threes up so that the Suns can still construct a modern offense. Jalen Bridges, he has some impressive tape. Massive improvement in his three-point percentage from his first to second year at Baylor, because he did transfer from West Virginia to Baylor in his his third and fourth season.
Yep.
But yeah, shot 41% on over 5 threes per game. Definitely a low usage role player at the college level, and that's kind of what he projects at in the NBA as well. But he shoots, he can defend, he's got good length. I didn't watch a ton of his passing game. I think his passing is okay. But yeah, just a kind of do-it-all role player who's going to get a good shot between the new Suns G League and, maybe some games at the big league level.
Yeah, our friend Rich, who's coming on the podcast later, he said he had him top 35 in this draft, and he went much later. The Suns, he went undrafted, so the Suns found a way to actually get a guy who was, in some cases, some people would have put him at the top of the second round, and the Suns were able to get him. Just a long, lanky shooter who, has the ability. He looks, It's very Keita Bates-Diop-esque. He looks like he would be a good NBA role player when you watch the film. How much it translates he went undrafted. It's not common that these guys become great NBA players, but sometimes they do. And this is the type of guy where if you look at the body, if you look at the resume as far as the shooting goes, these are the ones that usually work out. Shots translate really well to the NBA.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's not often when we talk about the second round, it's true. It's not often that these guys become superstars, right? There's a reason it's big news whenever a guy drafted in the 30s or 40s even ends up becoming a superstar, like the next Jokic or Jalen Brunson most recently or something like that. But like the undrafted guys, it's not that uncommon that they just become solid role players. We're seeing it all the time that the smart organizations are able to turn their undrafted hauls into real role players that compete for them on championship teams, like play heavy minutes in the playoffs. It's just that the Suns haven't really tried for the past 5 years because we didn't even have a G League team. And so we've never been the benefactors there, but now maybe finally we can be. So again, just reiterating the fact, Summer League starts, I believe, July 12th in Vegas. The Suns will be there, as will every other team. And none of this is confirmed. We're going to need the reporters to have to ask this question, but I would hope that we're going to get to see all of Ryan Dunn, Oso Ighodaro, and Jalen Bridges in Summer League, and it has made me enormously hyped for this iteration of the Suns Summer League, more hyped than I've been for one of their Summer League rosters in a long time, in at least the past few years. It should be a lot of fun. We got dogs. We have dogs on the roster.
And Oso is Spanish for bears, so we got a bear, too. Ighodaro played high school in Arizona, too. That's something that we should mention. Local kid who obviously went to college elsewhere, but played in Arizona. It's kind of cool to have another guy. It's always cool to see those guys get drafted. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to watch this draft live. I'd like to go back and see his reaction when he was called. Knowing, of course, because the draft is so weird, people make them wear hats of teams they're not even going to. But knowing that he was going to the Suns, I imagine is pretty cool.
It's actually worse than that. For the second round today, they were doing it on the ESPN set instead of like at Barclays or wherever it was.
Oh,
last
is that
night.
True?
Yeah, and they were still showing reactions of guys who were there, but like they were having Cassidy Hubbard. That's her name, right? Cassidy Hubbard was one of their sideline reporters. They were having her interview each player after they were selected, but then like one of her questions was always like, how do you feel about your fit with the whoever, like the Portland Trailblazers or something? And more than half the time, it was a team that had traded that pick.
It was a ton
because
of
the
trades,
second round, the second round was legitimately crazy. Picks were being passed around at an absurd rate. So like it would always be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna prove myself or whatever. I'm gonna fit in with these guys. It would never actually be the team this guy was going to. So it was just a fairly silly choice on the part of ESPN for that part of the broadcast. But obviously, how many people were even watching the second round live today? Probably not that many.
Yeah. I guess that's why they didn't put it in Barclays, because imagine selling tickets to the second round. There probably wouldn't be that big of a crowd there. I understand why maybe they didn't want to do it there. Ighodaro, Bridges, fun picks, not the highest ceiling player that the Suns picked. That's clearly going to be Ryan Dunn, and we're going to get more about him in a second.
What are you talking about? We got OG Anunoby, Al Horford, and Mikal Bridges tonight. Those are the three players we drafted.
On the Ringer draft board, it does say shades of Mikal Bridges and Royce O'Neal for Jalen Bridges. So, I mean, it's hard not to be excited about that. But speaking of Mikal Bridges, I wanted to bring this up. Mikal Bridges was traded. We haven't talked about this on the podcast. Mikal Bridges was traded to the New York Knicks. Now, that triggered a whole bunch of stuff, including the picks that went to Houston, and then all of the tweets about KD and Devin Booker about Houston wishing and praying on our downfall so that they could pick our bones clean at the end of it all. Now, that seems to all have been shut down by the Suns owner, Matt Ishbia. It seems like nothing's going to happen this offseason, which honestly makes it easier to come onto this podcast and talk about the draft. But having said that, the Suns are keeping KD. They're keeping it all together. The Nets are tanking. And the Nets probably, at this point, when we're looking for stuff to try to find trades for the Suns, where, I mean, they have one tradable pick now, 2031. If you're trying to find a place that might take a pick and you could get a player back, Brooklyn's that place now. You know, they're a team that they're clearly wanting to be bad. They got their picks back. They traded their best player in Mikal Bridges. They want to suck. Now, I want to know from you if there's anyone on the Nets that you're interested in that you think the Suns could trade for. And while I do that, I'm also going to give you a pick or a trade that you could tell me.
A strong hint. Well, here's the problem, bro. I already know who you want me to say.
Well, no, you don't say it. I'll give you that trade. It's
okay.
Yusuf Nurkic and the 2031 pick, because that's where all trades start. Now, if you can find a way to do it,
sure, yeah.
For Nasir Little, if you can find them wanting someone for Nasir Little, fine. Maybe you could do Nasir Little on a second round pick for a salary that fits in that. But let's say Yusuf Nurkic, 2031, and then you try to get Dorian Finney-Smith. You start there, and then maybe Day'Ron Sharpe is the other player that I wanted to talk about, because then you can get a center back and try to have a center in this trade. Now, does that make you a little weak at center? Yeah, maybe you can find another way to get another center.
Well, also I've heard that Brooklyn's not committed to Day'Ron Sharpe, right? Like, he's still a prospect who I think executives view him around the league and think he could be something. You know, not necessarily a high caliber starting center, but people think he could be something. But it seems like it's not working out for him in Brooklyn. He might just need a change of scenery. So yeah. I think what you're proposing there makes sense. I'm still a little bit uncomfortable with giving up. And we should just mention the fact that the Suns were able to successfully recoup a couple of second-round picks in the form of they acquired 2026 and 2031 seconds from Denver. That's great. I'm glad that James Jones was able to do that. But I would still be really, really nervous about forfeiting the 2031 first unprotected without getting a little bit more back. And I don't know exactly what that is, because I know Dorian Finney-Smith would fit on this team, right?
Yeah, he'd probably start.
He'd fit like a glove. He would probably start, maybe push Grayson Allen to the bench, and then Grayson Allen becomes like a supercharged six-man who just has to come off and chuck. But yeah, he might start. I like Day'Ron Sharpe. I still don't really know if it puts this team over the edge in the West, though. Like, there's so many other good teams in the West. Like,
you still need more moves. Yeah.
Then what are we talking about here, though? Right?
Well, it's like, no single move. No single move is going to put the team over the top.
Right, but we're talking
to do more than one thing here.
But we're talking about, so you would make that trade, and then the only other thing you'd have available to you, even if you crushed the draft, which I think they did, those rookies still need to play well.
Yeah,
which is a big gamble, and you need to hit your free agent signings, because there's nothing else they could do.
You need to hit your free agent signings, and then by the trade deadline, you have the option of trading guys like Dorian Finney-Smith, who makes basically $15 million, Royce O'Neal after he signs a contract, who will make probably $13 million, and Grayson Allen, who makes 15 or whatever it's going to be this year. So you have a little bit more options, a little bit more flexibility with players that are maybe a little bit more desirable than somebody like Yusuf Nurkic. Now, it doesn't make the team perfect right away, no, but does it give you more options in the future? Potentially, outside of course, getting rid of a pick.
If I can get a couple seconds back from Brooklyn sometime between now and 2030, so that I know I have a couple more cracks at it to try and get things right and pick more role players, understanding that those players probably aren't going to be stars, but I just need a way to keep the championship window continuously open by giving myself the means to acquire cheap talent that is like good enough to be a role player, right? So if I can get Day'Ron Sharpe and Dorian Finney-Smith and a couple seconds, then maybe we're in business. If it's just the two players, I'm uncomfortable with the.
Do you think Houston would give the Suns 2 of their picks back for that 2031 pick?
No, I don't think so. I don't think it's that.
But there's
valuable.
A good chance the 2031 pick is going to be more valuable than the Suns pick in this coming draft, right?
There's a chance. There's a chance, but you never know. I don't think there's enough of a chance that Houston would make that calculation in there.
I wonder if there's a way for the Suns to turn that 2031 pick into 2 firsts somehow. If there's any team willing to do that, and if you get 2 firsts for that, then you try to make that Nurkic trade with one of those firsts, and then you have, I don't know what, some probably bad first that you could keep and then maybe use for future trades or just draft a player in the future. Because that it's, to me, and this is a right or a wrong way to look at it. You can call it whatever it is. If you're saying, no, we're not going to entertain any idea of trading Kevin Durant, we're not going to do that. It's fine. It's fine. But then you really got to push everything on the table for this year, right? I mean, you can't just go, well, yeah, but we might need that pick in the future if we suck. You kind of have to make the trade now. You kind of have to say, what can we do to add as many good players to this team as possible. If it's a bad choice, it's a bad choice, but it's a choice that's made. And if you're going to try to win with the team that we have right now, try to win with that team.
I hear what you're saying. Me personally, if we already recognize that it's probably a bad choice, I'd rather not make the bad choice. I think they should add good players. Obviously, we're going to advocate that they have to add for good players.
And get rid of bad ones because Nurkic was bad in the playoffs.
I don't think he's a bad player. He did perform poorly in the playoffs. I think people are going too far with putting too many of the team's problems on Yusuf Nurkic's shoulders alone. He's not a bad player. Yeah. He had the best plus minus on the team for a reason. He's not a bad player. But yeah, I mean, you shop him around and see if you can get some stuff for sure. We are going to have to talk about free agency in the next couple days, man. When are we going to do that? It starts It starts the evening of June 30th.
Yeah, so
that's
soon.
72 hours
sometime
from now?
in the next 2 days, a day and a half. Yeah. I mean, it's really helpful to know who they drafted, right? We could have done it on this podcast, but we got to have one reacting to the draft first. So yeah. That'll be helpful. So, all right, let's just recap. Ryan Dunn, we're going to talk about him in just a second. Oso Ighodaro, we're excited about both of those guys. Jalen Bridges, funny that James Jones still got a James Jones in this draft. Mikal Bridges was traded. Happy for him, by the way. As somebody who's still a fan of Mikal Bridges, somebody who enjoys him, happy that he's on the Knicks. It seems like that's where he was meant to be after he was traded away from the Suns. Weird that the Twins are split up. That is a little bit weird. And also, I'm pitching the idea of Nurkic in the 31 pick to Brooklyn if there's a way to get something done there. Dorian Finney-Smith, I think, is probably the best experienced wing that could be available right now, besides somebody like Kuzma, who the Suns can't really find a way to get enough salary to trade for. So that's just an option that's out there. I wouldn't mind seeing it done. You got anything else before we switch over to our friend Richie?
No, I can't wait for you guys to hear from Richie, who knows much more about these prospects than we do, obviously. So, tune into that and be on the lookout for another podcast from us basically in the next couple days, depending on when you're listening to this, about free agency, because we're going to try and get some names that we're interested in out there before the evening of the 30th. And then also, if you're still game, Mike, the evening of the 30th, we might do another playback, because, again, the playback we had a couple days ago for the draft was so good, so successful, so many people in there. We had about 300 people in there simultaneously at one point.
600 people joined us on playback.
600 people total watched at some point. So it was a lot of fun, a lot of people participating in the chat. And we might do it, even though it's not a traditional broadcast, we might just open up a playback room for the first couple hours of all the free agency craziness on the evening/afternoon for Phoenix folks of Sunday, June 30th. For the first couple hours of free agency, we might just share one of our screens and scroll through Twitter and react to all the news as it comes in. And we can get all Suns fans there in one place again. It should be a lot of fun.
Yep. All right, we're going to switch over to our friend Richard Stayman, a.k.a. Mavs Draft, to talk a lot more about Ryan Dunn. All right, joining us is our friend, one of our favorite draft guys, Richard Stayman, a.k.a. Mavs Draft. Richie, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing good. It's good to be back. It's been a little too long, I guess part of that is the Suns not taking the draft seriously for a bit.
Yeah, they had to actually pick a player in the first round for it to make sense.
Rich, I want to talk to you every year if we can, but James Jones has not been allowing it. So thank you for coming on here on short notice, especially with all the changes in your life. Recently, you just moved across the country. I didn't even remember what time zone you were in when we asked you to come on, so thank you again.
Yeah, it's great to be here, man. East Coast, Central, whatever, Pacific time, I don't care. I'll join you guys for anything.
I want to talk, obviously we're going to talk about Ryan Dunn and the Suns draft process in general, but I want to ask you just about this draft as a whole. It was sort of fascinating to be watching it live. Yesterday, Sam and I watched the entire draft live, and it didn't feel like an NBA draft normally feels in those first 10 picks. A lot of people are calling this just not a great draft in general. Risa Shea going first seems like, look, it was more than one Bargnani comparison on our stream last night at the very least. How do you feel about this draft and particularly the top of the draft and where those players will stand in the NBA?
Yeah, here's my thing. I think This draft is bad. Like, that's why it sucked. That's why it was hard to watch. Let's call it what it is. This isn't the last year's draft. Like, I think last year's draft was one of the best ones I've ever been. Like, it was the first one I ever went to. Actually, I worked it, and it was fantastic. It was Wembanyama, Scoot, Brandon Miller, like even all the way down. Like, Leonard Miller was a second round pick, and he was really hyped up. So for me, I think it's just you go to this, and now Reese Shea goes number 1, and he's a guy who I think the Hawks went, well, he's not going to be bad. Like, he's a traditional, probably like your 10th best player in a draft. Like, give or take. This year I had him
sell
6.
A fan base on.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, like, yeah, he's a good complimentary piece. That's fine. Are you taking, like, I felt like there were so many better swings at number 1 where you get a pool of anybody. You get to blend upside floor, whatever you want with it. I just do not understand why they went that direction.
Can I just put you on the spot? Who would you have gone number 1 if you're Atlanta?
Alex Sarr. Just trade Capella.
That's what I was expecting. That's what I was expecting too. Like, it felt like, certainly there was no consensus in this draft, but it felt like if there was any consensus, like maybe the largest contingent of people was building a little bit of a momentum for Sarr, and I was surprised that they went with Reese Shea, but it is what it is. We'll have a friendly French rivalry between the two of them, I suppose.
Yeah, and another a Lithuanian person wants to challenge him one-on-one. I'm just surprised Sarr didn't ever do that.
Who's that?
No, y'all not see Matas Buzelis? He was like, oh, I can beat him one-on-one. And like,
no, I didn't see that.
Man, I've never seen the 11th pick challenge the number 1 pick to one-on-one. He did it like 3 times publicly over the last like month and a half.
that
Do you think he could beat him?
I think it's so
one-on-one?
Weird. I mean, Matas can create, so yes, but Reese Shea is the better player.
So I was expecting Matas, because obviously, like, you know how much research we do before these things, Richie, but I was expecting him to come up like with a thick Lithuanian accent or something, and then I didn't realize
he's from Chicago.
He was just born in Chicago, which honestly might be part of the reason why he has the audacity to challenge the number 1 pick one-on-one.
Yeah, not wrong. Not wrong.
Is born and raised Chicago product.
Hey, we're talking about this on the day the Bear season 3 is released, so I'm pretty hyped up on Chicago right now. So shout out to Matas. Now the Suns had an interesting draft in general in that they had the 22nd overall pick. They traded back in the draft. They got the 28th pick, and now they got 3 more second-round picks on top of that, including 1 second-round pick in this draft, which we already talked about on this podcast, and then 2 future second-round picks from the Denver Nuggets. Now, as far as Sam and I are concerned, I believe I'm speaking for you, Sam. I'm sure we already talked about it at the beginning of this podcast, but that was a good trade. That was smart for the Suns to actually get some sort of draft assets, considering the amount of draft assets that have gone out the door for the Suns in the past. Now, looking at what they did, going from 22 to 28, and trading Holmes, like, that's actually something we should even talk about in this case. How do you feel, first of all, about this trade? It feels like the right kind of draft, to me at the very least, as a non-draft guy. It feels like the right kind of draft to actually trade back and get a pick that is, you know, only 6 picks back in a draft where those guys are maybe kind of flat as far as their talent. But what do you think about that, Richie?
Yeah, I agree, though. I think it was a good move just to be, like, no matter who they took, regaining assets, like, that's what you should do in those years that you do actually have your pick. Is like the Lakers, I think, were an exception this year because Dalton Connect fell in their lap, but I thought they normally should have done that too, to just say, hey, if we move back 5 picks and recoup some of those second-round picks we've thrown away. The Suns did that, and they still got their guy. I mean, ESPN intentionally put Ryan Dunn to Phoenix. I think that was very clearly like that was who they were going to pick, no matter where they picked.
Smoke for sure.
Yeah, exactly. So they followed it, and they didn't reach for him and just go, it's fine, we got our guy. They got everything they wanted plus the guy they wanted. So I think that was a good move to get him.
How do you feel about Ryan Dunn as a player? Now, I'll say, just because Sam and I haven't had a chance to put our thoughts on the record, if you pick 28th in a draft and you tell a Suns fan they picked the best defender in a draft, it's hard not to be at least a little bit excited about that. Now, understanding, of course, the limitations on his offense, the Suns did not have basically any great point of attack defenders on the team last year, and it really did impact them because then they had guys like Bradley Beal and Devin Booker being the primary point of attack defenders in a lot of important games for them. So now they picked a guy who obviously will be someone that they could plug in to do that right away. How much he can impact the offense from a negative standpoint obviously is going to be a big point of conversation for the Suns because it's just he hasn't shown much. But overall, as a 28th pick, picking Ryan Dunn, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll even just preface it with a question. What do you think of a undersized 5 that purely is a dunker with this lineup with KD, Booker, Beal, whoever else you want to throw out there as the 4th player, and then Ryan Dunn as a 5 on offense that's just a dunker?
I think yes. I think basically I've already spoken on this part of it, Richie, but because we talked about Ryan Dunn on the podcast last week, and it was like, I don't think you make this pick unless you really believe in his ability to play the 5 for long stretches in the NBA. Otherwise, like if he was 6'5", and, had the same vertical leap and the same, defensive instincts and everything, but he was 3 inches shorter, this is a guy who maybe goes in the 40s. I don't know. That's just me throwing a random number out there. But his ability to live up to first-round potential for me is entirely correlated with, yes, he needs to learn to shoot. That's what really will save his NBA career. But at the base level, he needs to play the 5. So hopefully they believe in his ability to do that.
Yeah, and that's my thing is I think if you were to draw up a perfect fit, there are very few teams that were great fits for him to minimize the offensive woes and maximize the defense. Phoenix was absolutely one. So I did like that fit. I was going to be a little bit upset if they reached at 22, but not only do I think I'm starting to question if they have Virginia roots and whatnot, because they also took Ty Jerome, I remember 5 years ago, and I think there was somebody else. But also, I mean, I just feel like with Ryan Dunn, look, he's the best defender in the class, like you said. You got him the 3rd to last pick, second to last, whatever it was, 28th pick in the draft. Yeah, the best defender. You have a guy who, if you want the optimistic dream, he technically he was a shooter in high school. I think he grew a little bit too much, but now he's purely a 5 on offense. Even at the combine, they do it by groups and by position a little bit. The very first group was a group of big men. It was Zach Edey, Alex Sarr, Yves Missi, and one other big, and then Ryan Dunn. It was Khalil Ware, that was the other, and then Ryan Dunn. So give you an idea of what NBA teams think his offensive role is, it's that.
It's interesting. You're the first one telling me, though, that he was a shooter in high school. So I wonder, if there's an element of lost confidence.
I don't think. I don't think it's recoverable. I think he just grew too much. I mean, his arms are ridiculously long.
Almost 7'2", yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really it, because even just watching him shoot, he can't get the same shot twice in a row. I'm sure he had some fine workouts because an NBA caliber player will. Look, the way I see it is everybody keeps saying, oh, you just took Andre Roberson and expect everything to be fixed. And it's like, that's not it. Andre Roberson was a wing. He could not be a 5. The difference with Ryan Dunn is he doesn't have to shoot to actually be great, as long as he is next to a lineup like he's going to be this year.
Is he a little bit more Jared Vanderbilt then,
yes.
than Andre Roberson, right?
Yes.
That's the difference that we're talking about. I mean, the basic dumb guy comparison that Suns fans have been making, just because to give Suns fans a comparison to a player who we know very intimately well, is big Josh Okogie. Because it's all of us love Josh Okogie and his hustle and his ability to guard, multiple positions and whatever, but he's also 6'4". So you can more easily sell Suns fans on the idea of what if you just took a player like that, grew him by 4 inches in a lab, and then stuck him as a small ball 5. Doesn't it start to make a lot more sense?
And I think it does. I mean, Roberson is just such a lazy comparison. Because you see defender, non-shooter, and you're like, oh, it's Roberson.
Call him out, Richie. Call KOC out.
Oh, is that who? I wasn't calling him out. I mean, I've seen it 20, 30 different people
I'm sure
say.
You've seen it everywhere.
Everybody.
I have a question for you, though, about draft philosophy when it comes to guys like Ryan Dunn, because after the lottery, basically, the other 45 picks in any NBA draft, I think, yes, oftentimes lots of later picks end up becoming stars and no one could foresee it coming, but often you're drafting guys with the expectation of a role player, and then maybe upside is a secondary consideration. But I want to ask you, when you have guys like that, what's your philosophy on taking the type of like a specialist like Ryan Dunn is versus kind of the do-it-all prospects who maybe don't have that bankable NBA skill yet. Do you know what I mean? Like the versatile guys who haven't exactly figured out versus a Ryan Dunn. And it doesn't just have to be like Ryan Dunn in the defensive sense. There are also prospects who are like extraordinary world-class shooters, which is going to translate at the NBA level, but they don't have anything else yet, right? How do you feel about kind of those specialists and what level of confidence an organization needs to have in them in order to bring them into the NBA and fill out the rest of their games?
Yeah, so that is kind of the beauty of the hard part of blank slate scouting, where you're doing it as a whole, where you're just saying, here's a board, here are the players. Whereas if you're a team, like Phoenix's job in scouting Ryan Dunn, way easier than, say, Washington, right? Washington has a blank slate. They need that do-it-all guy. Phoenix doesn't need that. They have absolutely, like, if truly, forgive me for using y'all's title on here, if their timeline is the next year or two, or whatever you want to put it as, whatever number you want to say it is, why would you not take somebody the same way like the Mavs last year? They could have taken somebody with a much higher all-around ceiling. They took Derek Lively because it was a need, it was fit, and it was a day one acquisition. And obviously we saw it help them get to the finals. Without him, they don't do it. That's the beauty of like team scouting, and that's where like I love that stuff. That's what I was more doing when I started this with Mavs Draft in 2017, and I think it makes scouting so much easier because the same issues that the Mavs may face, the Suns won't face, right? So I think ultimately with Dunn, it's the right thing to not go for an all-around player, because also the all-around players are the ones that have the biggest chances to bust generally.
Interesting. Okay.
Right.
Because they're more raw. It's all theoretical.
Yeah.
When you have a defined skill, you have something to hang your hat on.
Yeah,
you need
sure.
some sort of bankable thing that this makes them an NBA player. Now, for some guys that connect or something, that's shooting. And for Dunn, obviously, it's on the defensive end. But you're talking about him as a potential small ball center. Now, we've talked about this on the podcast before and on our live stream yesterday. I think what makes somebody capable of being a good center, I think obviously he has the ability to dunk. Like step one, dunk. Yeah, be a good cutter, find ways to get to the rim and dunk. Like that seems like it's going to be his most bankable offensive skill right now, because truthfully, there's not much else. I think when you watch him play, the shot sort of looks like a trebuchet, like unloading a rock, throwing it over a castle wall or something, like because the arms are so long and the form is so mechanical, not broken, but
it's
just
not broken,
so mechanical. Yeah. It's not like,
but maybe to Richie's point, like different every time. Like I was noticing some stuff. Just I'm by no means a shot doctor, but like in his lower legs, his base, I noticed that he was basically had a different stance on every shot, and I was like, oh, okay, I don't know exactly what he's going for here. If he's trying to fix it mid-season or what.
I noticed the same stuff when I was at the Combine and I saw him shooting. It was everything. The base was different every shot. Even the release point was different every shot. So, like, I wouldn't expect him to be a shooter at all, at least for the next year or two.
Yeah, in some ways I really respect the Suns, like, sort of being willing to take on a project and not just saying we need. I mean, obviously he's somebody who can contribute on one end of the ball right away, but if they are willing, and now they have a G League team, right? So they have opportunities to actually develop guys. But if they are willing to put time and actually see a way to find out if that kind of thing can be developed over time, that's something the Suns haven't done in a while. They didn't even let Jalen Smith get to the last year of his rookie contract. Robert Sarver just said no. So if they're going to actually put time into a guy, it's nice that he has what he can do on the defensive end. As a center, though, the things that you expect, right? Rebounding, one. Obviously, he's going to be next to KD, so we have to factor in the fact that there's still a 7-foot guy on the floor in some of these lineups if he's playing at center. I can't imagine they're going to play him at center without KD on the floor. Or maybe Bol is going to be on the floor in that case as well. We'll see if he's back. But rebounding, screening, and then passing. And the passing, I think, is a scenario where it's particular to the Suns, because we know what's going to happen if Devin Booker or KD are on the ball. And you have Ryan Dunn stepping up to set that screen. They're going to put two guys on the ball. Like immediately, they're going to put two guys on the ball. That means you're slipping the ball in the short roll to Ryan Dunn. I watched a lot of film last night and this morning, and I don't quite see the ability to move the ball quickly at least in those scenarios, there's not a lot of advanced reads for passes. Now, you can learn some of the short roll stuff where it's like you can find the shooter that's open pretty quickly, even if you're not a great passer. But how do you feel about those types of center skills if he was being put at center? So the screening, the rebounding, and the ability to maybe find guys in the short roll if they are putting two guys on the ball.
I feel like his best case and most realistic case is like floating near average. At that point, I'm not super sold on most of his skills away from dunking and defense, but like you said, you can just teach him how to do that stuff. I think he's a very smart player. Like, you have to be to play for Tony Bennett and just overall at Virginia. I think that is where maybe Phoenix said, hey, we can teach you how to make these reads out of the short roll, because he will be used as a pick and roll man. And if he can do that, like, he didn't really get a chance to at Virginia. And Virginia ran one of the slowest offenses, so they didn't show a ton of what these guys could do on offense. So I think it is definitely learnable.
Isn't that Virginia every year for the past
every
decade
single year
plus?
And under Tony Bennett, that is how it goes.
I remember us having that exact conversation 5 years ago with Ty Jerome, being like, oh yeah, I don't know if Ty Jerome can like hit that next level speed in the NBA because Virginia plays at like a snail's pace, and that, yeah, it feels like that doesn't do a lot of favors for a lot of their NBA prospects. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be screening, to your point, if he can survive as a screener playing the right angles. But otherwise, just stick him in the dunker spot, right? Like, that's what we're talking about him doing. Is there anything he can do offensively, Richie? Here's how I would put it. Other than transition, like, I believe he can get out in transition and like absolutely electrify the crowd with some dunks. That'll be really fun. But from a half-court perspective, is there anything Ryan Dunn can bring for us offensively in year one? Or is expecting really like him to play serious minutes in year one kind of just asking too much?
No, I mean, I don't think he'll play more than 20 minutes a game. I'd be pretty surprised, honestly, if he's getting even 20, just because of the offensive woes, at least like in the regular season. I think it's just, you know, you can hide it a little bit more than in the playoffs. I think in the playoffs, he's a spot minutes guy when you need those defensive stops, and he'll be out there for the last possession of the game. But, like, to answer what he does, yeah, I mean, it's just, he's dunker spot. I mean, in the truest form, yeah. I think he is purely a dunker spot player on the offensive end.
And you could see he seems to be a smart cutter, which is obviously important if you're capable of shooting the three-point shot. Regardless, like if he gets up to 32% or 33% in the NBA, it's all going to be wide open. You know, that's just they're going to leave him. He's not going to have guys near him, and he's going to be taking wide open shots if he does take the threes. And this is, you know, we've spent a lot of time here talking about his offense. It's not why he was drafted. So let's talk a little bit about his defense. I'll just point out some things that stood out to me in watching his defense. Obviously, the actual box score stats when it comes to his defense pop. If you just look at it, the steals, the blocks, they're pretty crazy. The blocks are particularly crazy. Like if you pump fake at the rim and he's anywhere near you on that side of the court, even if he's not your man, he's going to block you. Like you're going to get blocked. You got to go up right away against whoever's on you, because if you're not, he's going to recover and get to the ball. The steals are crazy. He clearly is great at reading defenses, you know, finding the right place to get to when the passes are coming, as well as just straight up picks, like picking someone's pocket if they're dribbling near him. The thing that really stood out to me in watching him play is Virginia appears to trap a lot. So they're sending two guys onto the ball, and when they send two guys onto the ball, it's often with Dunn away from the ball. Like he is actually somewhere as that free roamer guarding two guys at once, and how quick he recovers to the ball or finds the right place to stand to make the passes essentially impossible because of his almost 7'2" wingspan really stood out to me. Like it's just a guy where if you got two guys on the ball, now you have one player essentially covering half the court where two guys are playing, and it's still difficult to get the pass there because he might still recover for the block. He might get the steal on the pass. And that's just something that obviously stands out in college. I'm curious, you know, speed of the game, playing faster. You talked about how slow they play, how much of that translates right away. But with defense, I mean, it often does. So, Richie, in your opinion, what stood out defensively, and how much do you think is going to translate right away?
Yeah, he's the best isolation defender in the draft. Probably the best isolation defender I've ever scouted in my time doing this in almost 10 years.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, he's really good. He's really, like, if you search, like, I posted a scouting report on my Substack, so it's in there, but also if you just search on Twitter and don't feel like going to Substack, if you just search Twitter Mavs Draft, Dunn isolation, just those 3 words, you will see the video. It is lockdown defense. Like, it is some of the best isolation defensive plays I've seen, and it's against point guards, it's against forwards, and it's against those creating bigs. So, like, he really can defend anybody. He is a 1-5 defender. I feel like he is that level of good. He can do things at the rim. Now, is he going to win against 7-footers? Probably not. You have to calculate that. Like, you do not put him out there when Victor Wembanyama is out there. That's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, but you don't stick him on Jokic as your
right. You put him on the guys who, like, they're not post threats. They're like, I don't know, even against Dallas, for example, when Lively's playing, like, I don't think Lively gets enough looks to really warrant we can't play him against Lively kind of thing. Maybe you go more power forwards as the centers, if that makes sense. Like, if John Collins is playing the 5 or Markkanen, whatever, like, I don't even think Markkanen does, but like, that kind of thing makes a little bit more sense. But just as an example, a low usage big or a little bit undersized big, you absolutely can run him out there. But a traditional big, it's not going to work.
Sam, what stood out about his defense to you?
That just sounds...
We haven't talked about it too much.
No, that just sounds really good, man. I'm still just reeling from Richie's comment, best isolation defender that he's seen in 10 years. That is an insane comment to make. How do you not get excited about that? For me, in defense, I had seen the point of attack. I had seen the isolation stuff, honestly, but I was most impressed really just by his ability to do it all. Like, most of the highlight plays that I were seeing were out of the free safety role and with that weak side rim protection, right, Mike? So it's the fact that he can do everything from day one on the defensive end. He appears to be a good point of attack defender. He appears to be a good help side defender. It seems like the only thing he can't do is play against those super, super lengthy, athletic bigs who, right, like Richie said, are more post threats. But if he can guard 1-4 and small 5s, that is already a 97th percentile outcome for a defender, right? So, like, he's let's put it this way. He's coming for that Dan Marley Hustle Award from year one. He's gonna get it. Josh Okogie, if he comes back, and by the way, we should know if Josh Okogie picks up his player option in the next couple days here. But he's gonna have some competition. And actually,
he might not now, right? He might not come back now that they have somebody who can kind of do the things that he does at a
I would
height.
still like to see him come back, and I think it would be fun to have both of them. But did Grayson Allen win the Dan Marley Hustle Award? Who even won it last year? Richie, in case you don't know, the Suns hand out.
I'm
Hustle
familiar.
Award.
I'm familiar.
Okay.
I'm very familiar. Do not worry.
This classically was like PJ Tucker's award. He's the guy who's won it the most times, I think. But in recent
Grayson
years,
Allen,
in recent years, it's been flipping around. And last year in particular, honestly, I think you could make the theory that Grayson Allen winning the Dan Marley Hustle Award was so disgusting to Suns brass that was the best that they could do, that they drafted Ryan Dunn as a direct reaction to that, because he's coming for it.
Mikal Bridges really had it locked up for 10 years if he stayed on the Suns, and then, of course, when he was gone, it's like, well, now what do we do?
Exactly. I mean, what better example of the fact that they just didn't have that guy on the roster anymore? They needed to go get one.
Yeah, it's going to be, like, I'll be honest, when the pick was first announced, I had mixed feelings about it. And it's not that I don't believe in Ryan Dunn as a player in general, because I think it's very clear that he has an NBA skill. The extent to which I have sort of shifted my thinking about the Suns to the problem with the Suns last year was the offense, and that the offense actually was one of the biggest issues that they had as a team. Not to say that the defense was great. Obviously, the defense could get better, but their inability to maximize the 3 players that they have and their offensive skill sets impacted my view of the team as a whole. And so to pick a guy who is maybe unplayable as an offensive player in the playoffs for long stretches did impact how I felt about it. But having said that,
well, especially because Tyler Kolek was right there. Like, they could have gone the complete opposite direction, right, and taken the offensive undersized guy who would have helped, steady them on the second unit. So it is.
And as we record this, we don't know what they've done in the second round, so it's possible they can, I don't know, we'll find out what they're doing and record that at the beginning of this podcast later. But after watching the film, I think it's really clear that they got someone that's going to impact the defense when he's on the floor. And you know how I feel about this, Sam. I think guys that are really high energy, really high hustle players also impact the way other guys play around them. It's a contagious thing where now everybody's playing a little bit harder when they share the floor with them. So I think overall, I've come around to thinking this is a good pick. And as well, like, let's be honest, 28th in a bad draft. That's where they picked. They picked 28th in a bad draft, and they got the best defender in the draft. It's hard not to consider that a win. It's hard not to consider that overall a pretty good pick, considering all of the circumstances.
Dude,
they can make changes outside of that, and if they just change how they play, I think it could improve the offense dramatically. But they really couldn't improve the defense dramatically without changing the personnel. And that is something that they did do, and I think the defense could get better as a result. Yes, Sam, what were you going to say?
I'm just going to give my final thoughts here by saying I'm all in. I've been all in on Ryan Dunn. I just, like, not that he was my favorite prospect in the draft or anything. I understand he has very serious limitations, but I think he's going to be instantly a fan favorite. And here's the most important part to both you and Richie here. I think you'll find this funny. We didn't trade the pick for Torrey Craig, right? Like, there are so many horrendous decisions that they could have made last night that, thank fuck, they actually picked a guy. They picked a guy who was only a sophomore in college even. He wasn't a 23-year-old prospect. And they appear committed to developing young talent, and they even made the roster more athletic in the process. Honestly, James Jones, shout out to you. I feel that you are truly maybe learning from some of the error of your ways. I have no criticism, broadly speaking, about the Suns' strategy.
They watched what Jaden McDaniels did to Devin Booker in the playoffs and said, we need one of those guys. Now, whether or not he can become that offensively, obviously remains to be seen. But the defense, maybe he can match some of that. Overall, Richie, I'm curious. Overall, do you think the Suns so far, now we're recording this after the first round, had a good draft with what they did, trading, of course, involved, and then picking Ryan Dunn?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, whenever you can get somebody that's a day one contributor in a draft, like one like this, like you said, where you got somebody who has a defined role, who can be a part of your rotation, at that point in the draft, like any draft at this point, where you pick 28th, if you get somebody who can play, that is a win. Does not even matter if they're the last person in the rotation, if they're your number one player. It absolutely does not matter. I really like this pick. I'm interested to see what they do because they have, 51 tomorrow? Or they get...
They got 56.
I can't remember what they got returned. They got 56. Okay.
56. So, we're going to talk about
and
that.
2 future seconds
Yeah,
that they could potentially use to
the
draw.
2 future seconds is interesting to me, especially... Yeah, that part is cool.
No, I mean, 56, they'll probably just sell it for cash. I think most teams do. No, not the Suns. Most teams, 55, 56, however many picks there are, depending each year how many teams tamper. The teams in the last 5 picks generally do not care, unless you are the Sacramento Kings in 2011, where you get Isaiah Thomas. But other than that, I don't think they're going to make the pick, and they don't need to. You're not finding somebody who's going to contribute at that point in the draft. You're more likely
you can get them undrafted probably. Agency. Yeah, exactly. If they're back there, they probably can just manipulate it in a way that those guys go undrafted and they could sign them after that. And then they have more control over his contract, so that makes a lot of sense. Well, Richie, I appreciate you making time to talk to us. I know this is the busiest time of year for you. You have been very insightful. If you don't already follow, what is it, at Mavs Draft? Is that what you are on Twitter?
Yeah, despite also being a Magic fan and living in DC, I am still Mavs Draft.
And check out your Substack is where you are doing all of your draft coverage at this point. And you're now, by the way, you're able to go to these draft places. You are credentialed now. You can be there in person and get the insight right there in front of people. So congratulations on that. I'm excited about that for you. So definitely check out everything that Richie's doing. And do you have anything else that you want to plug?
No, I think that's it, really. I really appreciate you guys having me.
You're the best, man. Thank you.
For over a century, Johnny Walker has shared its bold spirit with the game of golf. Now, crafted with Devereaux Golf, Johnny Walker introduces the Johnny Walker Blue Label-inspired Sunday Golf Bag, elevating the game with sleek design, Blue Label hues, and refined gold accents. Celebrate your hole-in-one with a premium Sunday bag crafted by Devereaux Golf. Submit proof of your achievement to johnnywalker.com/blue-in-1. Please drink responsibly.